Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Henty Machinery Field Days 2024, and a wonderful opportunity here in the AgTech Talk Hub. We're bringing to you different suppliers and providers from right across the AgTech space. And catching up with me today, Luke Brodrick from Zetifi. Luke, how are you going today?
Yeah, good, thanks, Justin. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Now, today we're talking all things connectivity. Connectivity, obviously, it's a massive, it's a massive impact on our farming operations, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose when you think about it, like from a connectivity point of view, it's the missing piece of the puzzle to make everything else work. So it's the glue to everything, and it's a massive, massive talking point in this day and age, especially obviously 3G shutdown happening on Telstra and Optus side of it, but also general, like when you look at how customers are using tech these days and devices, everything is connected. You can't transfer money from a bank without getting a two-factor authentication. You can't, or your driver's license are all stored digitally these days. So connectivity, and especially on the farm, where people struggle with their day of any connectivity at all, being able to talk about that and give customers options is, it's great.
Now, when we talk connectivity, obviously everyone is, well, I won't even say familiar, it's just not even second nature these days. We know about connectivity when it comes to making voice calls, potentially even video calls on the farm. We know that cellular element and aspect, whether it's whether it works for us or whether it can potentially pose a bit of an on-farm challenge. But there are other different types of connectivity in the space. Bit of a snapshot. What other options have we got out there for producers?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'd sort of talk about two different types of versions of connectivity. One being a broadband connectivity. That's more like your LTE, your Starlinks, your ambient fixed wireless, your anything that is terrestrial is about the best way to put it. And then you got your narrowband. So your narrowband sort of sits very heavily in the AgTech side of it. So it's your IoT satellites, your Cat M1 networks, you've got your LoRaWAN networks, your Sigfox. So that, from a AgTech point of view, a lot of the providers that are here will be connecting their devices via the narrowband. So difference between obviously your broadband and your narrowband is obviously broadband's all about throughput, where narrowband networks are all about low data throughput. So they just need bits of data being pushed out at certain points through the day when people are checking on devices.
Now, we'll stay on this track, and when it comes to our devices, as you mentioned, there's quite a plethora of devices on farm, whether it be the humble mobile phone or smartphone. These days, we're seeing more and more advancement towards, but obviously we go into the ag IoT or Internet of Things space. What sort of connectivity are we looking at across farm when it comes to using our devices?
I suppose, yeah. So the best thing to think about is when you're looking at options for connectivity, have a look at what you're actually trying to connect. Like, okay, from our point of view as a Zetifi, we would do rural connectivity, and we would have a customer having internet in their house, but where they actually go to work is in the sheds, they're shearing sheds and all across the farm. So having the internet at one particular point in the house was great for when they're home overnight, but when they're actually trying to make their business decisions wasn't fully usable. So what we would do is extend that network out to those areas where actually customers required it. Now, people always used to come to us and go, I need Wi-Fi across my whole farm. Like, why would you want to do that? One, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars that you're not going to get any return on. And let's be honest, trees don't need Wi-Fi.
They might have a Netflix subscription.
Well, yeah, it's just another one to add to the list. But the main thing to think about is, okay, from a farming point of view, look at what you're trying to connect. Look at what options you've got in the ag space that is using your IoT SIMs or they're using the LoRaWAN network, and then bring that into your homestead area and then push that out via an internet connection. So main point is look at what you're trying to connect, see what options are available. It's not a one-shoe-fits-all sort of situation because every provider's got so many different options available, and if you can sort of hone them into one sort of solution from a cost-effective point of view, it's going to be better for everyone.
Now, you've mentioned before things like satellite connectivity and satellite technologies. Now, when we start looking into let's say the outer space with our satellite devices, there's a few different flavours of satellite access that we can utilise. Can you talk us through them, and are they all created equal? Are we seeing similar? Access and ability, or are there differences with the different varieties of satellite?
Yeah, it's a bloody good question actually. So, if we go back years ago, well, not even years ago, even half a year ago, a lot of customers were using NBN satellite. Now, NBN is a great service. It's been around for years. The issue that we saw with customers on NBN satellite is being that it's a higher latency. So when you look at the geo satellites that have been used for NBN, they sit, don't quote me, 10, 11 kilometres in the air. So when you go to hit the go button on your Google search, it has to go all the way up and all the way back. Now, when customers were trying to do a Wi-Fi call and using that internet connection to make and receive calls when they didn't have LTE, they would actually get the robotic voice, and that's what a lot of people would always hate. Now, Starlink was bought out, and it's an exceptional product. Has its pluses and minuses across the whole board, but it works. It works exceptionally well. And the biggest portion of that is a customer could get access to that. They could install it on their house. They could use that Wi-Fi calling capability the same as if they're making a mobile phone call. And the reason for it is that because it was using LEO satellites, which is low Earth orbit satellites, so they were sitting a lot closer, and so the latency was a lot lower. So it's very similar to like your latency on a mobile phone. So from that, customers were able to make changes and have connectivity where they never previously had it. Now, that's not saying that traditional terrestrial networks still don't have a place, because they absolutely do. Like, Starlink isn't going to suit every man and their dog. There's still people out there that are happy with their LTE connection, happy with their NBN service, happy with their Starlink NBN satellite. So it's just looking at what customers need and then provide them all the options, and they just make their choices at the end of the day. Like, as I said, it's not a one-shoe-fits-all situation. It's find out what's best for you, have a look at all the options, and just weigh it up.
And that's 100%. We're seeing a lot of producers. They're keen to identify solutions, and what happens on my farm is completely different to say what happens on your farm, and we could be next door neighbours in terms of connectivity and access to it. Now, just staying with satellites for a moment. When we look at, you mentioned things like Starlink and some of our other internet service providers, there's also other satellites out there that are, well, obviously they're a satellite, they're still in outer space, but you may not be getting the data access to it all the time. It's more like you just get a certain amount of overflights each day, which they can be good in some applications, but may not be the most appropriate mechanism in other applications.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, let's look at the two main satellite connections for data throughput. So, obviously, traditional NBN satellite, which is your GEO, and your low orbit LEOsats, they're really, really good for the throughput of what's available. And, even better still, GEO is not that one, MEO is, so medium Earth orbit. Now, the main reason for that is obviously because they're closer to Earth. When you look at your sensors that don't require that huge data throughput and just require that occasional checking, that's where your GEO comes in. And I mean, you've got in your GEO, you've got your Immersat, in your low orbit satellite, you've got your Starlink, your OneWeb, your Global Star, and those sort of key players. But a lot of people are even starting to go away from your satellite connectivity to your IoT, and then still going back to LoRaWAN. There's some new Wi-Fi products coming out. It's called Halo Wi-Fi. It will be a part of our product set that we bring out over the next 6 to 12 months. And the main difference between that is, compared to your traditional Wi-Fi, is it travels 10 times further. Not as much throughput, but from being able to check satellite connection or check a sensor on a pump or whatever the case may be, it just needs that bit of internet connection to then be able to send that signal out to be able to check it remotely.
There's some great options there. Now, just a final question with around the satellite connectivity. When we start looking at things like, and obviously Starlink is a very popular product, we're seeing delivered to rural and regional areas. Is it? Do you think it's the be all and end all, or do you think that it's that there's still a place for terrestrial or even copper or fibre technologies on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still always a place for terrestrial. A lot of people go, oh, well, what will happen when we get direct to handset through satellite? It will happen, but it won't be as good as what you're used to. And that's what people will come to understand is, yes, your Starlink and your LEO satellite stuff is exceptional and it works and it's opened up so much opportunity for customers that have previously had a good internet connection. But there's still that need for the 3G, 4G, 5G networks. Obviously, when 3G shuts down, it won't be there. There's still that need for customers to have NBN connection from a national point of view. But, I mean, there's nothing stopping said person turning off Starlink and no one's got internet. I know there'll be contingencies in place, but like redundancy is the biggest part. No one ever thinks about, okay, what happens if I lose my Starlink connection and I've got nothing? You need a terrestrial network. So from a point of view of your connectivity, like there's always that need. You're not going to replace what you've used over the last 10, 20 years with something that's new when there could be failures.
Now, just talking about that redundancy process, and I promised I wouldn't throw too many curly questions, and I hope this is not too curly. But when we look at redundancy on farm, I think you've highlighted a really good opportunity there. It's one thing to have your amazing wireless or satellite connectivity there that will give you access to the network, but having a blended approach, so a system with either built-in redundancy or what we call a backhaul capability. For those that haven't heard of backhaul before, Could you just give us a snapshot what backhaul is?
So we'll just squeeze that back one little bit more. Like when you look at redundancy from a point of view on farm, it's not just about the connectivity piece, because connectivity also requires power. So being able to have a solar backup that may give you a running battery of 6 to 8 hours is also a big portion of it, especially with bushfire season coming up, and nothing will work without power. So also thinking about that portion of it. But from a backhaul point of view, yes, your backup connections are pretty much needed. Like we have a lot of customers in our space that have your NBN, have your Starlink. They will do maintenance work, and if they don't have a backhaul option or a backup option, they get stuck out. And the first person that cops it is people that obviously provide the Wi-Fi to them, which is us. But people don't think about the what ifs, and especially in this day and age with everything that's available and everything that can go wrong, what happens if you didn't have connectivity for 6 to 12 hours? How would that impact your business, and what have you got in place to override that?
Now, when we're looking at that capability, we might be looking at, say, a device, and it might use carrier or service A, and then it could, for example, it might have a secondary SIM card or something like that uses carrier or service B that gives us access to that backup. We might be using A primarily as a primary access point, but when we can't get access to A, the system might be smart sensing and smart switching, so it can just automatically pivot to that carrier B to be able to carry on its duties with either seamless or low latency changeover. Yeah,
absolutely. So all of our previous services that we installed, we normally would have two SIM cards in each device. Then what would happen is during that time, Starlink come on board, and a lot of customers changed to that. We still would carry those two SIM cards through to give the customer the option of, if something went down, they knew that they were going to be connected. And at the end of the day, when customers have struggled so long with connectivity, being able to provide them with options that they couldn't do is it's been a game changer. And that's where everything's going. Everything's that seamless changeover, that seamless carry through of a connection that if one is lost, the other one kicks in without you even knowing. Like, we were at the stage where we were contacting customers, telling them that, hey, you might want to check with NBN or check with Starlink on your connection, because we can see it's using our internet connection, which is the backup, because of what we put in place.
I think that's something really important to consider, whether it be connectivity access, say for on farm for the office or around the house, but also wider ranging if you're carrying a mobile connectivity station, say for the ute or tractor or header around harvest season. Having that redundancy built into it, because as we said, unfortunately, systems, even the most well-engineered systems, can suffer from either short-term outage or long-term outage. And having that redundancy and having that backup plan, we always say, what's your plan B? But having that plan B built into it is really critical. Yeah,
absolutely. And like, we get a lot of customers just in general chat talking about, okay, well, your device work everywhere, and what happens if this, and this, and people forget that there are other options out there. Like, you look at Zoleo. So Zoleo is a little device. It's a satellite connectivity communication device. I think they're about $150, $200, and then you pay a subscription each month. That should be everyone's plan B, C, whatever, because what it does, it connects to your phone, even if you've got no connectivity at all, and will allow you to send out messages. In this day and age where your workplace health and safety is number one in everyone's mind, for a small piece of the puzzle, it works and works extremely well and won't get people cut off.
Now, when it comes to producers wanting to implement connectivity solutions on farm, what are your top recommendations? Talk us through that process. What do you encourage any of your producers or farmers to consider before they go embarking on that device selection process?
Chat with everyone. Like, have a look at all the providers that you're looking to integrate with. Like, if you're looking to put in security cameras, if you're looking to put in sensors, you're looking to put in just Wi-Fi around the sheepyards or the shearing shed or whatever the case may be, have a chat to everyone, find out what their best options are, and then put it all together. Like, it's not rocket science. It's just doing your research and doing your due diligence to make sure that what you have will work when you want it to work.
Top tip or recommendation for before you go on that journey?
Research. And nothing beats research. Even me buying something, I will research before I go in and put money down on something. Just because, I mean, that's why my brain works. I want to know the ins and outs of everything, of how everything works. But being able to see how, and especially from a farm point of view, where you have to spend so much money to get that connectivity and get that connection through, and like security cameras and everything, like everything costs money, and if you're going to spend that money, you need to do that research to make sure that everything's going to work together how you want it to work.
110%. I think probably something that we've also seen, I'll just speak from experience here with the Farmers of the Future program, is that we've had producers, obviously, as we say, connectivity does form a big, potentially a challenge or a limiting factor for a lot of our operators within regional and remote areas. And even before getting to that research point, if I can share one bit of advice, is knowing what you've got and also what you don't have, because a lot of people will be quick to jump and say, oh, look, no, don't have mobile phone coverage, it's not going to work for me. But even if you can break it down to that little bit of a granular nature, like, can I send a text message from this location? One bar can be just as powerful, an opportunity there to be able to refine it or reinforce it than just having a blanket assumption that there's nothing there.
Yeah, and that's a very massive point, because like a lot of the stuff that when we were speaking to customers, they're like, oh no, I've got no internet there and I've got no cell-fi there at this location. Then you go to do an install and you uncover all this equipment that they've been using and you question a little bit more about it. So yeah, absolutely, knowing what customers have and knowing what you as a customer has is a massive part, and understanding what you have too, not just glazing your eyes and going, oh, I'm not sure what that does. Like if you've paid for something and you've got something sitting there, know what it does and how it works, so that way you don't spend more money to then replace it.
100%. I think, yeah, even knowing to, a good example is when you've got the farm map out, grab the if you've got the kids at home, just borrow their crayons or their colouring in pencils, and just pull up a copy of your farm map and just shade it out and mark it out. If you know that you can make a phone call at this water tank, then you might want to make that green. But if you know that you can only send a text message at this location, then maybe you want to mark it orange. And if you know that there's it's a dead zone, then mark it another colour, and that's just going to give you that knowledge and ability to be actually take all that information. And you as a supplier, that's generally one of the first questions I think that you guys would probably ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And people will always go, "Oh, no, I've got no connection on my farm," and it's not till you drill down on it and go, "Oh, no, I know I can send a text message." I always go up to the tank because I know I can send a text message there if I'm stuck. Those little pieces of the puzzle, they all come together to make everything work together. So knowing that information before going in is very, very handy.
It is really critical. Luke, thank you so much. I think might be a good opportunity now if we've got any questions from the floor we can take those.
When it's farm map, some days I reckon I can get a signal in one spot, but I don't get it another day. Is that possible?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Main thing to look at is, especially on those particular days, and you might go, okay, I know I can make it on this day or couldn't on the next day. What's your cloud cover like? I reckon on the days that you could make it, your cloud cover's a lot higher or a lot more dense than when you couldn't make it. So what happens with cloud cover, it actually traps in the frequency for your LTE network because it's lower, and it stops the LTE signal from travelling out. So you're not going mad, don't worry. What you'll find is on your sunny days, because there's no cloud, like you look at today, there's not a cloud in the sky. If you were struggling for connectivity at a certain point, you're not going to get it today. But then you have a look at a cloudy day and you know you will.
I think that's probably even a really important point there is, as we said about going through and knowing your knowns, but also knowing your unknowns, but also, as you rightfully said, different conditions can change different responses, and I think that's really important to really communicate that back as well to your supplier when you're building that profile and researching that solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And just knowing that, even from a user point of view, knowing that, okay, a cloudy day, you'll actually get better connection than what you would do in an LTE sense, compared to your sunny day. And until you actually sit through that and realise that, it doesn't make any sense.
Thanks. We've got reasonable Optus coverage of our farm, but we don't want to go Optus because we don't get signal elsewhere. So can you You've just got to go one or the other, or you can go both at a great expense, or...
Well, it's that rock and a hard place. They are getting better. Optus is getting better for their coverage, and it's not until you actually use that you can actually see that actually happening. Telstra, Vodafone, whoever you're stuck or whoever you are currently with, if you're happy with them, that's great. You got to look at where you're actually spending the majority of your time. Are you spending all your time travelling, or are you spending all your time at home? Now, if you answer, 80% of the time you're on the farm, well, make the change. Or move one of your numbers across to an Optus, so that way you know on farm you can just put a divert through from your old phone to the Optus phone and carry that around the farm, knowing that you're not going to have an issue. And then when you go off site, use your Telstra phone. You shouldn't compromise on safety on the farm for the sake of a carrier.
I think a really good point there to add too is when we were talking about that redundancy piece and and not just a redundancy piece, but I'll call it an opportunity piece there too. Is if it's within scope and within the realm of a solution for your of what we would call a pain point, there is the opportunity there to consider that dual carrier technology. So it doesn't matter if it's, say, for example, using a local terrestrial mobile phone tower with a redundancy of a satellite unit, or it might just be using two different network providers that, say, a dual SIM card approach.
Yeah, and the good thing with that is, like, all your phones these days are all eSIM compatible. So I know Optus is heavily pushing at the moment. You can get 30-day free trial if you go on the Optus website, and you can scan the QR code so that way it gets activated through on your phone on eSIM. Like, it's a good approach. Like, what do you got to lose for 30 days to have that extra SIM card in your phone that if you know that something's going to happen, you can call out on? Like, it's a 101 of safety. Being able to make and receive that phone call when you need it is paramount. And even from a harvest point of view, knowing that, okay, I'm harvest and I know that in this particular paddock I don't have any connection, but if you guys are trying to trade grain and get the best price, you need that action right then and there. And if you don't have that, you've lost. So for the sake of a $20, $30 a month SIM card, it's nuts, really.
Fantastic. Well, Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join us here at the AgTech Talk Hub, day number 2 of Handy 2024.